This week on The Watchman, when terrorists murder innocent people, she's there to hold them accountable. See how one courageous Israeli attorney is bringing terrorist and rogue regimes to justice in courtrooms around the world.
We thought that as lawyers we can join the fight against terrorism by doing what lawyers do best, go after the pocketbooks of the terror organizations.
Plus, learn how CUFI is taking the fight to Israel's enemies on Capitol Hill and get the inside story on what Iran and ISIS are doing to Israel's south as we head back to the Gaza border with Avi Melamed. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel only on TBN. And welcome to The Watchman. We saw it on 9/11, and we've seen it in countless other terror attacks since then. Terrorists massacre hundreds, even thousands of people. Some of them are suicide bombers who kill themselves in the process. Others slip away and escape into the dark corners of places like Somalia, Yemen, or Syria. And all too often, their evil deeds go unpunished. Now, we know that God is a God of justice, and He will have the final say. But for the victims of terrorism and their loved ones, the aftermath of a terrorist attack can be incredibly frustrating. Just look at how the Palestinian Authority of Mahmoud Abbas pays lifetime salaries to terrorists and their families, rewarding them for the murder of innocent people. How do you think Taylor Force's family feels? He was an American citizen and U.S. military veteran who was stabbed to death by a Palestinian terrorist in 2016. That same terrorist was killed by Israeli police, but his family now receives a lifetime salary from the Palestinian Authority. Folks, this is official Palestinian law. Every time a Palestinian terrorist kills someone, his or her family cashes in. The bigger the attack, the bigger the payment. As a matter of fact, in 2017, these terrorist payments added up to $350 million. That's 7% of the entire Palestinian Authority budget. And here's the kicker. There's a very good chance that some of those terror payments were funded by American and European taxpayer dollars. Remember, the Palestinian Authority receives hundreds of millions of dollars from the U.S. and other Western countries every year. It's no wonder President Trump has threatened to cut off that aid. Our team at Christians United for Israel calls this Palestinian Authority law pay for slay. And a bit later in the show, we're going to show you how we're working with lawmakers in Washington, D.C. to put a stop to it. But up first, when it comes to holding terrorist and rogue regimes accountable, no one does it better than Nitsana Darshan-Leitner. She's an Israeli attorney who heads up the Shurat Hadin Israel Law Center. Nitsana and her team specialize in using court systems around the world to go on the legal offensive against Israel's enemies. This is very important, folks. It's cutting-edge work, and Nitsana joined us recently in Jerusalem to share her story. Take a look.
We started in Shurat Hadin in the beginning of the Intifada in the year of 2000, when the blood was spilled on the streets of Jerusalem, of Tel Aviv. And we thought that as lawyers we can join the fight against terrorism by doing what lawyers do best, go after the pocketbooks of the terror organizations. We started bringing lawsuits against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PLO, Palestine Authority, countries that support terrorism like Iran, Syria, North Korea. Later on, against banks that provide financial services to terror organizations. We wanted to bring those who devastate the life of the terror victims to trial, to court, to impose liability on them, and to get them to pay for the damages that we're responsible for. We're able to seize $600 million in terror assets, and we're able to collect, actually to get $300 million that went to the terror victims. The main focus today is to block Iranian funding, is to stop Iran from funding these terror organizations. And we're doing it by going after Iranian assets. We have judgments that we're holding against Iran. We just put a lien on the deal that Iran signed with Boeing to purchase 80 aircrafts for $17 billion. We come and say we have a judgment against Iran. We are entitled to the Iranian money or to the aircraft that eventually they will get. You may think that Iran doesn't care, that a lawsuit against them for hundreds of millions of dollars really not hurt them that much because they have billions of dollars in their budget. And in fact, they don't come to court and defend themselves during the trial. However, when we get a judgment and we go and enforce it against their assets, they immediately show up in court. They send lawyers, they get the government involved, they run a whole campaign to save their assets, showing you that they do care. When Israel's enemies realize that they cannot beat us militarily, despite the wars they launch against us and the horrific wave of terrorism they unleashed against us, they started to use a different type of weapon, a non-conventional one, a very devastating one. It's called BDS and lawfare. And they are trying to delegitimize the state of Israel, to isolate it, to put pressure on it, to boycott, to sanction it, to divest from it. The Palestinians or those who support them go and try to utilize the court system in order, again, to pressure Israel by filing frivolous lawsuits against Israel, against Israeli citizens, against IDF soldiers. So what we did in Shorat Hadin is went to the International Criminal Court and filed war complaints against the leaders of the Palestinian Authority, warning the Palestinians that if they come to the International Criminal Court, we will be waiting for them there. In the United States, there is a law called Anti-Terrorism Act that prohibits any American company to provide a platform, to provide material support, to provide any type of services to a designated terror organization. All the terror organizations are raising funds on the social media, are recruiting militants, they are inciting to kill, and people come and join them. They spread their propaganda, they connect with each other, they're using Twitter and Facebook just to make connections among themselves and with others to come and join them. So we went and filed billions of dollars of lawsuits against Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube in the courts in the United States. Cases are not over, but we already see the social media changing their way, or at least declaring they're going to change. We just wrote a book, came out last month in the United States, called Harpoon. Harpoon was the secret unit in the intelligence services headed by the legendary Mossad director, Meir Dagan, that fought terror financing. They were going after the money that went to the terror organizations with one goal. They have one mission: follow the money, target the money, kill the money. They knew that money was the oxygen to the terror organizations, and they were determined to choke it off. The book just teaches you how to think out of the box, be creative, because if you want to fight these terrorists, you must think out of the box.
Folks, be sure to pick up Nitsana's new book, Harpoon. You can find it on Amazon or wherever books are sold. It is a must-read. Well, coming up after the break, we head from the courtroom to Capitol Hill to hear how CUFI is holding the enemies of Israel and America accountable in the halls of power. Stick around.
Last year, 5,000 Christians attended the CUFI Washington, D.C. Summit. The 2017 summit was our most power-packed gathering in history. Top leaders and foreign policy experts from Israel and America agreed on two things. Our two countries are stronger together, and Christians United for Israel plays a major role in keeping that relationship strong.
Through Christians United for Israel, more than 3.3 million believers raised their voices, have not been silent in support of Israel. And you can be heard in every city and town across America and in every office on Capitol Hill. And rest assured, the man down the street at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue hears you too.
That was 2017. Now get ready for bigger, better things at the 2018 summit as CUFI celebrates Israel at 70. Make sure the world hears your voice. Where will you be in July 2018? Register now.
And welcome back. We told you earlier on the show about the Pay for Slay program, lifetime salaries handed out by the Palestinian Authority to terrorists and their families. Wouldn't it be great to see these payments end and make sure that your taxpayer dollars are not used to reward terror? Well, this is just one of many issues that CUFI's legislative arm is drawing attention to on Capitol Hill. CUFI Action Fund Chairwoman Sandra Hagee Parker joined me to talk about the fight against pay for slay and much more. Take a look. Tell us, number one, what we are doing in Washington, D.C., and how our influence is growing in our nation's capital every day through the Action Fund.
Sure. What our Washington office does is, it reminds our leaders that Christians United for Israel is a sharpened spear, and the Washington office is a spearhead. It holds our leaders accountable. It lets them know that our membership is a strong voice that should be heard and should be reckoned with, and that our members are ready to act. Going after Israel and the Jewish state is the new brand of anti-Semitism.
Oh, yeah.
And now the euphemism is anti-Zionism, or, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Zionist. It's a political movement. But you know what? It's the same strategy to isolate, to delegitimize, and we are there to be, like your show, Watchman on the Walls, and to say that never again and not on our watch.
And the BDS narrative, Sandy, you make a great point. It's just the destruction of Israel by other means.
Exactly. So instead of using bombs or weapons, we're going to, it's actually very ingenious if you think about it, because it's insidious. It's sneaky. What the BDS movement wants to do is to invest our American tax dollars with companies that do participate in boycott, divest, and sanction. Exactly. And so it's making our funds an instrument of anti-Semitism.
It's so crucial for CUFI to have that strong presence in our nation's capitals, in the halls of power, where, Sandy, we're actually affecting legislation. Speaking with one voice, nearly 4 million members, we are actually moving hearts and minds in the halls of Congress. Talk about that a bit, how our influence is really growing.
It is, Eric. On the BDS front, CUFI has been instrumental in getting 24 different bills passed on the state level, while we're working on the federal bill to say, well, we're going to fight this battle individually in each state.
So, Sandy, just real quick, so that's basically banning this whole movement, boycott, divest from, sanction Israel.
What it does exactly is to say, okay, for instance, the state of Texas. The state of Texas says that if you don't do business with Israel because you are a BDS company, then we, the state of Texas, are not going to do business with you. And so you're free to continue to engage in BDS. Texas is not going to stop you from doing that. But Texas is going to say, if that's your position with Israel, then you don't get to do business with us. And so 24 states have passed similar legislation across this nation, and that's wonderful. CUFI is also involved with the Taylor Force Act. We've also been involved, exactly, very important legislation, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act.
Taylor Force, long story short, American military veteran, butchered by a Palestinian terrorist in Israel back in 2016. Give us a little more background on Taylor Force, the Taylor Force Act, and why it's so important, why we are behind it here at CUFI and the CUFI Action Fund.
Sure. The reason why this act is named after him is because the terrorists who perpetrated this crime against Taylor receive a stipend from their government.
From the Palestinian Authority, Israel's supposed partner for peace, Mahmoud Abbas and the PA.
Yes, and so it's basically pay to slay. And, they try to guise it as a legitimate welfare system. But, the longer you're in jail, the bigger that paycheck is.
You are set for life.
You're set for life. The bigger the crime, the bigger the prize. Your family gets benefits. You get a salary in prison. You are celebrated. And so the Taylor Force Act says, okay, the United States gives foreign aid to the Palestinian Authority, and we are not going to give our foreign aid to any of these welfare programs that are really just fronts for pay to slay, for terrorists that are killing our citizens.
I want to ask you, too, about your recent testimony on Capitol Hill. We actually have a clip right now of you testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. Let's take a look at that real quick.
Anti-Semitism is not a Jewish issue. It is a human issue. Jewish identity and ancestry continue to be a target, whether one is male or female, conservative or liberal, religious or agnostic. History has already shown us what happens when good men and women do nothing in the face of such evils. Not to act is to act. Thank you for your consideration and your time.
Now, Sandy, I was there in the audience. You did a great job. You did us proud. Talk a little bit more about that testimony, why it was so important, and why it's so important for the CUFI Action Fund to be behind the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act.
What the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act does is on college campuses, there has been an increasing amount of anti-Semitic behavior towards students. And under Title VI, Jewish students are protected from harassment predicated on being Jewish. And the interesting thing is, although we've seen this increase in anti-Semitism on campus, the Title VI is being used for prosecution of 0 cases for these students who have experienced this type of harassment.
So there's no recompense for them. They're being persecuted, harassed, and that's that. They complain about it, and...
So the interesting thing is, what the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act does is it essentially is saying, well, you're not prosecuting these cases, so it's one of 2 things. You either don't know what anti-Semitism is when you see it, or you're ignoring it. So we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that it's because it's hard for them to identify what anti-Semitism is. So the interesting thing is the United States State Department already has in law a definition of anti-Semitism. And we use it to keep track of anti-Semitism globally.
It's a perfect template, you would think.
It is exactly that. And so what we're saying is, why don't we hold ourselves to the same standard? The Department of Education use the definition for anti-Semitism that's already been codified by the Department of State. And when you have harassment that appears to be based on somebody's Jewishness on college campuses, consider the definition.
And Sandy, as you said, our brave CUFI students are literally going into the lion's den, and they are being harassed for standing up with their Jewish classmates and standing up for Israel on campus.
That's right. They're the front lines. Our college campuses are the front lines. I said it in my testimony, and I'll say it again. The lessons that you learn in the classroom are going to be the policies in the public square tomorrow.
Sandy, last question. You have so much going on right now. You're juggling different cases, different legislation on Capitol Hill. What's big for you coming up in 2018? What is the CUFI Action Fund looking towards? Is there any big initiative we should know about for the coming year?
Well, obviously, CUFI and the Action Fund want to really focus on the Taylor Force Act and making sure that that gets seen all the way through and signed into law. Any type of legislation or effort that is going to continue to take our tax dollars and weaponize that against our friends Israel and against ultimately us, we're going to say no.
The Action Fund is holding them accountable. Sandy, thanks so much. Keep up the great work. Thanks for being with us today. Big thanks to Sandra and the CUFI Action Fund team for all their great work for Israel in Washington, D.C. Well, up next, we head to Israel's border with Gaza to hear how Hamas is not the only threat to Israel's south. Our good friend Avi Melamed is back with some very important information. Don't move. The Bible is clear. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob made an everlasting covenant with the land and the people of Israel. They are the apple of his eye. But Israel faces enemies on all sides who want to annihilate every Jewish man, woman, and child.
God gave us a voice and a responsibility, a biblical mandate to bless Israel and to speak up for Zion's sake. Find out how and when you can order my free book, Why Christians Should Support Israel. It will teach you the Bible facts of the power and prosperity of God that comes to you when you read this text.
You'll learn why Israel has a biblical and historic claim to the land, Call Christians United for Israel at the number on your screen or go to CUFI.org/book and we'll send you your free book from Pastor John Hagee. If you won't speak up for Israel, who will? Welcome back. Watchman contributor Avi Melamed joined us recently on Israel's Gaza border to lay out the threat posed by Hamas and its network of terror tunnels. But Hamas isn't the only bad actor operating in Gaza. From Iranian proxies to ISIS, this tiny coastal strip is jam-packed with some of the world's most notorious terrorist organizations. Take a look. Avi, we've seen an uptick in recent weeks in rockets coming out of Gaza into Israel. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is another player here in Gaza. Iran funded, of course. So they're also kind of stirring things up as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Islamic Jihad in Palestine, IJIP, and particularly in Gaza Strip, is very powerful. He's a very serious competitor to Hamas, sort of speaking. Yeah. Up until now, generally speaking, both organizations, despite of some differences between them, obviously cooperated under the frame of the resistance, obviously massively supported by the Iranians. Yeah. Just the same, Hamas is aware of the fact that Palestinian Jihad in Palestine, and particularly in Gaza Strip, has a very significant armed power that potentially at some point could become even sort of a challenge to Hamas military superiority in the Gaza Strip. But just the same, Islamic Jihad, in the end of the day, has to be tuned also to the messages coming from Egypt, coming from the Gaza Strip, and coming from different parts of the Arab world.
I wanted to real quick ask you about ISIS. There was recently ISIS in Sinai, which is also a stone's throw from here, recently declared war against Hamas. What does that mean? How does that affect the dynamic here?
ISIS is a substantial challenge as far as Hamas is concerned, both ideologically and to a lesser extent operationally. In the Gaza Strip, and particularly in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, where most of the refugee camps are located, these areas are known to be more hub of the Salafi jihadist ISIS-style affiliated factors in the Gaza Strip. There has been a couple of events in the past where Hamas crushed, whenever Hamas came to the conclusion, Hamas crushed any attempts of the ISIS-affiliated factors in the Gaza Strip to challenge his sovereignty.
Hamas rules Gaza with an iron fist.
Correct. And recently, what happened due to the fact that ISIS is losing ground in Syria and Iraq on the one hand, but ISIS is not going anywhere because it continues and it wants to show the world that it continues. We just saw recently a couple of the most terrifying attacks conducted by ISIS-affiliated factors in the Sinai Strip, Sinai Peninsula.
Not far from here.
Not so far from here, like half an hour drive and you are there. We know that there is an ongoing cooperation between ISIS militants operating in the northern part of Sinai and ISIS supporters and affiliated people inside Gaza Strip. By the way, some of the ISIS-affiliated factors in Gaza Strip are originally people who used to be either part of Hamas or Islamic Jihad.
Wow.
And they criticized Hamas for Islamic Jihad, arguing, Eric, believe it or not, that Hamas and Islamic Jihad are too veggie.
They're not radical enough.
They're not radical enough.
So they graduated to ISIS.
ISIS does not present a real challenge to Hamas, militarily speaking. On the other hand, Hamas, of course, is all the time tuned to the possibility that ISIS factors or supporters of ISIS inside the Gaza Strip will try to challenge ISIS Hamas rule.
Folks, things are heating up in Gaza as we speak, and we'll be keeping an eye on it for you all year long here at The Watchman. Well, up next, my final thoughts on the battle against terrorism and how you can help fight it. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Stick around.
With over 3.5 million members, Christians United for Israel is the largest pro-Israel organization in America. And for Zion's sake, we will not remain silent. We won't stand for the lies and political attacks that threaten Israel's safety and the future of the Jewish people in their God-given homeland. We want you to join us in this sacred movement.
The Jewish people are not alone. Christians United for Israel, I want to thank you for standing up for Israel. I want to thank you for standing up and being counted. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Israel needs you to take a stand. Join Christians United for Israel. Make your voice heard and be remembered as a defender of Israel, the apple of God's eye.
And welcome back. Folks, it was great to have Nitsana Darshan-Leitner and Sandra Hagee Parker on the show today, sharing about how they are on the front lines in the legal battle against Israel's enemies. And what can we say about our good friend Avi Melamed? He's been with us on the Lebanon border, the Syrian border, now the Gaza border. He is a true watchman on the wall. And that's what we're trying to do here, folks, at Christians United for Israel. We are a Genesis 12 organization. What does that mean? Well, we believe that God meant what he said when he told Abraham he would bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. That is a foundational verse for our team at Christians United for Israel, and we invite you to join our movement. Join America's largest pro-Israel organization. We are nearly 4 million strong, 4 million followers of Jesus, and we're standing in the gap for Israel for such a time as this. And guess what? We are growing every day. You see the information there on your screen, the phone number, the website. Join us. Join the movement for Zion's sake. Well, thanks for joining us this week on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.